So listen guys, today we're talking about how to start an adult daycare center, but one of the larger ones, a big 8 to 12,000 square foot adult daycare. What should you project? What kind of budget should you put together when you're thinking about estimating the cost of starting this behemoth of an adult daycare? But first, you know what to do, right? Do I have to keep telling you guys? But can you just do me a favor, please? I'll keep putting this information out, but you first have to do just one thing for me. Just like, comment, subscribe, one of the three or all three. If you do all three, I'll give you bonus points. I don't know what they're good for, but you'll get them, okay? So anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me on the #1 show for senior care entrepreneurs. Today, we're talking about adult daycare startup costs for an 8 to 12,000 square foot center, somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000, $500,000 to $1.5 million. Whew, that's a big number to say. That's a big number to stomach. I'm sure like it's probably shocking right now, but you know, the reality of it is, again, as a reminder, the majority of the audience that we're focusing on, the types of centers we're creating are intended for the private pay audience. So if you're opening up an adult daycare center and you're a nonprofit organization, or you might focus on Medicaid, or you might be part of a church or another kind of nonprofit healthcare system, this may not be the video for you. This is a for-profit private pay model primarily. We do accept other insurances and we do talk about like the different types of insurance programs to accept, and it might depend a lot on just really the area that you're in, the state you're in, and how your Medicaid program is set up. But all that being said, I share that kind of as a preface to what I'm going to talk about here, because we're talking about designing a center to attract private pay individuals, and we're really focusing on those individuals that might be using services like Home Instead Senior Care, Bright Star Care, Right at Home. They might be using a Comfort Keepers or an in-home care. They're paying privately out of pocket, but this could be that alternative for those families who are caring for their mom, dad, spouse, or loved one. So that being said, the adult daycare startup cost for an 8,000, 12,000 square foot center, we'll kind of break it down. I mean, obviously, the two biggest costs are going to be construction and working capital. And this particular scenario here, the reason for a wide gap is we're talking about the difference of 4,000 square feet, from 8,000 square feet to 12,000 square feet. So the type of construction, the way you build out your center, do you purchase it? Do you lease it? How much money do you get in tenant improvements? And also, as a reminder too, the way we're breaking these costs down, this is startup costs and construction costs in one column and working capital in another column. This is kind of one-time upfront expenses. Working capital is like kind of ongoing expenses. Like, do you have enough on hand for those first 6 months? Okay, so going back to startup costs, construction costs, upfront costs, fixed costs that don't necessarily have, they don't fluctuate month to month, but they, this is what you need to have upfront to get started, okay? So think about your space. Are you adding an area for fitness? Are you adding multiple administrative offices? Are you gonna have a hair salon? Are you gonna have an area to help people with showers, things like that? Are you going to have a designated area for someone that might have memory care? Every single time you're thinking about these different areas that you want to have, are you adding a wall? Is there water or electrical running to that area? If so, just think each time you do that, you're incurring more construction costs. Because if I add a wall and I need electrical and now I need plumbing, I'm having to break up the flooring, I'm having to break up the concrete, I'm having to move piping. More than likely, I'm gutting this entire place. I mean, what are the odds you're gonna find a perfect place, right? So you're having new ceiling tiles. You're gonna probably be rerouting a lot of the HVAC system. You might be replacing the HVAC system. A lot of these things are taken into consideration that you may not have before. So again, in today's world too, I mean, this might be a low estimate on the construction cost. The reality of it is it could be pushing close to $1 million when you're thinking about a 12,000 square foot center. And a lot of it, again, is gonna depend on the amount of walls, the amount of plumbing, how many bathrooms do you have, how have you set the space up, what does your kitchen look like? Are you using a lot of glass to divide office areas? That's gonna be expensive too. Glass is just crazy expensive. Another thing you're taking into consideration is now you're talking about a center that is gonna be capable of holding somewhere between 80 to maybe 100 to 120 people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of chairs. That's a lot of tables. That's a lot of games and activities, and that's just a lot. That's a lot. So the reality of it is the furniture expense is just going to be a lot. Like, cause maybe you don't purchase it all up front. Maybe you purchase like, enough for 60 people or 70 people or 80 people, or you say, hey, you know what, we're gonna purchase enough for the entire place. However you choose to do it is gonna depend a lot on what you think, how fast it is for you to, kind of open and fill the place up. And also, are you concerned about whether or not you find matching furniture in the future if you only buy like maybe half of it now? So, but furniture cost is gonna be a massive expense in a 12,000 square foot space. And you're gonna wanna find durable things. Like you wanna make sure that whatever you're buying when it comes to chairs and tables, this stuff is gonna last. It's been proven to like kind of, make it through maybe a restaurant environment, an environment that gets beat up a lot, So make sure you're buying good quality stuff because it's gonna get beat up. The muckers and them canes, man, they're dangerous. Now, inventory. Again, this is gonna be like, how many different types of games do you have? What types of gaming programs do you have? What types of maybe technology are you integrating into your space? Are you using programs like i2NL or other things out there that might be good for activity programming, but they might be expensive? There might be a hardware cost and a software cost. Have you thought about those things? That might tie into your inventory. You might have all of your kind of like, cleaning supplies and your stuff related to the kitchen side of things. But that inventory too, this list also kind of includes like, the decor, the decoration, things you might hang on the wall, pictures, murals, those types of things. Like just taking into consideration all the stuff that's gonna go into the space, right? And then office supplies. A place with 12,000 square feet. I mean, this is a big place. You're gonna have a lot of administrative overhead. You're gonna have a lot of need, for computers and printers and copiers and, like places to store all this stuff. And so, when you're thinking about office supplies, don't gyp yourself on what those expenses may be, to have the furniture too for the office. Like, have you thought about all the different things that kind of go into an office space that kind of are like fixtures and stuff like that, right? So marketing expense, this is a massive space. You better fill this thing up fast. If you don't, the working capital, the burn rate is going to kill you. So have you put enough money like set aside for marketing efforts? Are you pre-marketing prior to opening? Are you allowed to do that in your state? Depending on the licensing, you might have some issues there, but can you market to the public, let them know you're coming? You're not open yet, you're not licensed yet, you can't help them yet, but you will at some point in the future. You can maybe start creating a waiting list, but putting a ton of money into that in the stages where you're going through construction, you're going through all the licensing process. Like, this is the time to build like the awareness in your community that your adult daycare program exists, and don't cheap out on that marketing effort. Like, I'm talking spending $30,000 to $80,000 because this is a massive, massive space. And you want to make sure that you're getting enough leads that are coming through your system. Legal and accounting, again, to put together your LLC, set up the accounting, like sitting with an accountant, kind of going over how things should be documented, how you should handle bookkeeping. Are you bringing a bookkeeper on staff? Are you going to utilize your accountant, maybe a bookkeeper that they might have in their office? And then also insurance. I mean, insurance is gonna be massive. Like, insurance is always going to fluctuate depending on the number of people that you care for and the size of that space, because the liability risk just goes up the more people you take care of, right? That insurance expense, that might be somewhere between the neighborhood of $20,000 to $40,000. And does that insurance expense even include transportation if you provide that? Another thing you're gonna have to take into consideration is signage. I mean, this is a massive space. I mean, you're gonna need signs everywhere. Like, you're gonna have signs on the outside of the building. You're gonna have signs on the vehicles. You're gonna have signs like on the marquee outside. You're gonna have signs, all throughout the interior of the space. Like, when people walk in, maybe throughout the space, kind of designating certain areas. Signage is not going to be cheap, and especially in a space of this size, because the bigger the size building too, the bigger the signage has to be so it can, so people can see it. And then licensing, this one doesn't change all that much depending on the size of the space, but that still will probably be about the same as many of the others. Again, you'll definitely want to make sure you hire someone. If you're in a state like Florida that is licensed, you have this thing called the proof of financial ability form. You have to fill it out. This is something you definitely want to have an expert fill out and just pay the money to have them do it, because it'll reduce all the headaches. Your accountant will be confused when they see it. So give it to someone that already knows how to do it. So working capital, one of the things that is going to be a massive expense to take into consideration is, well, really two of them. And working capital, these are ongoing expenses now. This is a point in time. Okay, this was the honeymoon stage, man. This was like, you guys were excited because this is the creative part, and you're planning and you're dreaming and you're like creating, like, what the space is gonna look like and how the people are gonna feel and all of the amazing stuff that goes into it. But now it's like, the day has come. The doors are open. And like you may have seen on some of the other videos that we talk about, like, you open day one and guess who shows up? No one. It's just you and your team by themselves. And you're like, where is everybody? I thought they were coming. Where'd they go? So this is like like literally, this is the death trap, guys. Like I can't stress this enough. Like that first 6 months, like you will need to work harder than you've ever worked in your entire life for these first 6 months. You got to make sure that every single person in town knows you. Every single person that comes through your doors, you got their name, number, phone number, all their email, their contact. You're thanking them. This is the time to be like omnipresent as much as you possibly can, because this is the death trap. But you want to make sure that between the day that you open your doors and 6 months out, you have enough money to cover working capital, salaries, payroll, utilities, and interest expenses. Because like literally, like guys, this is crunch time. And so, you know, in a space that's 8 to 12,000 square feet, you're talking about like somewhere between $60,000 to $120,000 is what it's gonna cost you in rent for that first 6 months, depending if you're spending $15 to $20 a square foot. And again, like we've talked about before, you know, is that like $10 base per square foot plus $5 CAM or triple net, or is it 15 plus 5? Like, so what is your actual total cost, including base rent plus CAM or plus triple net or whatever? What does that cost to you? The other thing is with salaries and payroll, you're gonna have a bigger administrative cost. You're gonna have nursing, you're gonna have, you know, an admin and maybe an assistant admin, you're gonna have a front desk person, you're gonna have maybe people on transportation, or maybe you're gonna have people, you have an activities coordinator, you have, you know, a care team. You're gonna have this entire staff together because you have a big place here. You're like, you can't do this by yourself. Like there's a lot of moving parts. Like in a 4,000 square foot center, you can probably be almost in every place at the same time. But in a 12,000 square foot center, like, yeah, that's not gonna work. Good luck. So like you're going to have a team on day one, and this team, you're going to be paying them, and like it's not gonna, like you're not gonna go find 6 people that just all want to jump on board. They want to be part of your dream for free for 6 months. Like they are gonna expect a paycheck every Friday. And that being said, do you have enough money to cover those paychecks? You know, have you set it aside? This is like money set aside in a separate bank account that you have not spent yet, that you've prepared yourself for this 6 month period, okay? So like we're talking about setting aside somewhere between $140,000 and $270,000 just as a cushion to get you through this death trap, right? You have enough money in utilities, and you know, if you're getting an SBA 7A loan at 5.5% interest, amortized over 10 years, you're gonna spend somewhere between $15,000 to $35,000 in interest expense those first 6 months too. So guys, this is a big deal. This is a big investment. Of course, like this is totally doable. This is possible. You know, there's, you know, but the reality of it is like, you just really need to make sure that you have a good understanding of what it's gonna take, how much it's gonna cost, what your community is like. You know, is a 12,000 square foot center going to do well in the size of community that you're in? Is it a big enough community? Are there enough seniors there that you can take care of in that area? You got to make sure you're doing that assessment first, and then just really crunching those numbers. And remember, you always do what? You guys should know by now. I've said this a million times. You should do what? Times by 2. Whatever you put down as far as you think this is what it's gonna cost you, times it by 2, times it by 3, okay? I mean, this is a wide range, right? So like when you're thinking about your space and you have a real rent amount, and you have, you know, real construction costs from your, you know, the person that you're working with, and some of these, you have these real costs like actually estimated, you have invoices, you have work orders, you have an idea of exactly what these things are costing. Remember, just, you know, when you're thinking about that kind of like budget, times it by 2 as a conservative estimate, because you might get that, you know, initial like proposal for construction, but the second you get into it, you're gonna find problems that you never foresaw coming, and it's going to happen, guaranteed. It has happened every single time for me. I've done this 3 times, and it's always happened. Now I'm just like, times it by 10, okay? But times it by 10, I'll be safe. So it's, I know that's a little extreme, but I'm just trying to say is like, just don't try to think that you can do it for less than, you know, what you're budgeting. Like you really can't. It'll never happen that way. It just guaranteed it'll never happen that way. Just don't even try it. Seriously, stop, don't try it. Just times by 2 or 3. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's important, and I want to make sure that you guys are successful, because I want to see adult daycare become the leading, like just literally like the leading service for seniors into the future. I want it to be the future of senior care. It is probably one of the best, most beneficial services that any single, like any family member that is taking care of alone could ever imagine having for the senior loved one that they're caring for. So this is definitely the future of healthcare for our senior population, and I want you guys to be successful, because it is gonna have a huge impact on our seniors, and there is nothing more I could ask for than that. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. Do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, show some love, and now let's get back to work. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to learn how to open your own adult daycare center, go to adcpro.com. If you'd like the latest business tips, click here, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. Click here. We'll see you guys next time.